Well, new reporting in U.S. media says President Donald Trump was hidden in an airport catering truck as part of an elaborate security operation prompted by an alleged Iranian assassination threat. The president was effectively smuggled out of Turkey after last month's NATO leaders summit when he swapped planes on the tarmac in a move that fooled some members of his own entourage and journalists accompanying him on the trip. The CBC's Caroline Bargut joins us now from Washington with the details. So, Caroline, what more can you tell us about this secret flight?
So, Arthi, when U.S. President Donald Trump flew to Turkey, he actually flew on a plane that had been gifted to him from Qatar, and it had been refurbished and turned into the new Air Force One. But when he was leaving Turkey, he said he was going to take the old Air Force One. He didn't say this at the time, but we now know it's because the new Air Force One was sort of a rush job to convert it into a presidential plane, that it doesn't have all the security features. So he was going to fly on the old plane. Well, this old plane was actually used as a decoy, according to the Washington Post. And Trump actually flew out on a military plane. Now, this is how it was done. You can actually see the U.S. president getting onto, we have a graphic that we're going to show you in just a minute, where you can actually see the president getting onto the old Air Force One. And then you see behind him, there he is, he waves to reporters and to cameras. Then you'll see behind him there is a catering truck behind this plane, that white truck. Well, the cab of that truck was actually raised so that the president and some aides can get off the plane, get into that catering truck, and that catering truck drove him to a military plane. You see at the back of the plane, you see a bunch of people getting on. That is actually the president's press pool. They travel with him whenever he goes places, and they believe that he was on that plane, but he was not. Dan Lameth is one of the Washington Post reporters who broke this story. Take a listen to what he had to say.
My understanding is there was some White House staff that did not know. This was kept close hold in a small group. And obviously the White House press corps, which reported not only in that day, but in the subsequent weeks as well, that the president had traveled on the quote unquote old Air Force One. That's simply not the case, we're told.
So reporters who were part of that press pool who were on the old Air Force One said that they were told to keep the shades down on the windows for the entirety of the plane. When they asked why that was, they were told the Secret Service had wanted that, so they weren't allowed to look outside. Now, interestingly, the president was actually seen getting off the old Air Force One when it landed in the UK. We don't know at this point how he got back on it from the military plane. Once he did get off it, he got onto the Qatari plane and flew back to Washington.
Now, of course, we know that the security threat must have been quite high in order to go through this elaborate plan. Let's talk about that for a moment.
That's right, Arthi. There was a credible threat to the president's life from Iran, and this actually happened at the time when the U.S. and Iranian negotiations had fallen apart and the U.S. had resumed attacks on Iran. When Trump was asked on this new Qatari plane, he was with the reporters again, with the pool. They asked him about the Iranian threat, and here's what he had to say.
Were you aware of any credible threat by Iran against Air Force One?
I have a threat all the time. I'm number one on their list before you. But if I go, you go, right?
The White House has not acknowledged this bait and switch decoy plane operation.
Okay, Caroline, thank you for these details. That is the CBC's Caroline Bargut reporting from Washington.